Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles, and today we're featuring a KV2 platoon with Fat Joe 117 and Eddie the Trooper. I actually have a very good reason for showing you a KV2 video today. I mean, not that I really need one, it's the KV2. It's the undisputed King of Derp. It's the Kentucky Fried Chicken of derp tanks. Everything else is just a pale imitation. But I do actually have a good reason today because of what's going on the Sandbox server. Are you aware of what they're doing? They're changing the way high explosive shells work. Now, before everybody gets carried away, it is just the Sandbox server. What's happening there is not necessarily going to make it into World of Tanks retail, but it might. And what they're currently testing out fundamentally changes the way high explosive shells work, and that of course is going to have big implications for our friend the KV2 here. What they're doing is basically removing all armor penetration from high explosive shells. High explosive shells will never penetrate the armor of your tank, they will only explode on the surface. Now, the shockwaves from those explosions can still create spalling on the inside of the tank, which can still damage crew and equipment, but the actual blast itself will be confined to the outside of the tank. Now, the reasons they're doing this is to try to make high explosive damage more predictable. What they're trying to do away with is all of those occasions where you load the high explosive, hit a heavily armoured tank and it does 0 damage. Or where you load the high explosive, hit a tank that you expect to be able to penetrate and it doesn't, and you do hardly any damage. But what it's also going to do with those occasions where you're in a 40 TP, you're round a corner, there's a KV2R staring at you, you just sit there staring at it, and you get your dumbass derped into oblivion, just like that. But we like that, and we like that even more. Remember KV2R, derp giveth, and derp taketh away as well. And you see, this is why we love the KV2, because of moments like that. And if these changes go through as planned, you can kiss goodbye to this, because your shells will never penetrate the target, and the maximum damage is getting nerfed by about 1/3. And that's kind of the point of the KV2. The KV2 is just the most obvious and infamous example, but you've got the ISU with the 152mm gun, you've got a lot of the Japanese super heavies. Down at lower tier you've got tanks like, is it the Mark IV Cruiser, the British medium with a 3-inch howitzer, that's hilarious. The KV with a 122mm howitzer. Yeah, these are fun tanks because of the unpredictability and potential for massive derpage of these guns. So if these changes go through, and again I remind you they might not, but if they do, well, you can kiss goodbye to all that. No more 910 average damage on the KV2's gun when it penetrates, and when it doesn't penetrate, 431 damage on the OI seems pretty good for a shot that didn't penetrate. Well, you can kiss goodbye to that as well, because the damage ranges that they're looking at for guns in the region of 150mm in caliber, well, we're certainly no longer looking at 910 average damage, we're not even looking at 750 average damage. No, we're looking at pretty much that. Almost exactly that, 325 average damage. And I realise I'm starting to sound a bit like a broken record repeating it, but while this is not guaranteed to go through in its current Sandbox server form, if it does, you can kiss goodbye to the KV2 as we know it. Full health Firefly caught sideways on, 750 damage. Not anymore. Oh, that VK's taken a hell of a spanking. KV2 to the rescue. Just hold on there, buddy. Hold my beer. I got this. With a little help from the artillery. Whoa, easy there, Tiger wannabe. Let KV2 go first. Let's see if the ARL's expecting KV2. Can I get proxy spotted any? There it is. Oh, yoo-hoo. Yeah, he's having second thoughts about that. He's not feeling quite so brave now, is he? Wait, VK, what are you doing? Don't. Wow. The ARL missed the VK. And the VK didn't kill it. And the ARL didn't miss the second time. I don't know. What can you do? Fat Joe tried to keep the VK alive, but the VK was so determined to get the kill that he just threw his tank away, and he even failed to get the kill. ARL thinks he's gotten away from Joe. Well, he has gotten away from Joe, but he hasn't gotten away from Eddie. Either way you look at it, that's death by KV2. Oh, hello, is that a Dicker Max? Now, you see, under normal circumstances, that would have been a hit because he didn't aim, but he must have been having capitalist thoughts at the last second. And so, the hand of Stalin did not reach up from the icy depths of hell and guide his shot to the target. Oh, Eddie the Trooper just got another kill. That's 2 40 TPs so far that have fallen victims to KV2s of one flavour or another. Sadly, poor old Eddie is not going to have long to celebrate his victory over the 40 TP because he got spotted while annihilating the enemy medium tank. And enemy artillery right now is thinking, low health KV2, om nom 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 nom. And Eddie's rampage has just been brought to a premature close. On the bright side, Fat Joe's team are still going to win because they're the only team that still had a KV2 in action. Those are the rules. The team with the most KV2s wins. Although that might not necessarily be true if these high explosive changes go through, because that wouldn't have been a kill on the Dicker Max. Dicker Max had 415 health. This gun will only have a damage range of 320 to 330 average damage. Of course, these are just the high explosive shells we're talking about. I mean, there's no mention of any changes to the KV2's on the piercing shells. They're still going to do 700 average damage. But where's the fun in that? Particularly when you're bottom tier and you're trying to penetrate an IS-3 with a 152mm AP shell that only has 110mm of penetration. Yeah. So what's the point? What exactly is Wargaming trying to achieve with these changes? Well, there are 3 things that they want to achieve. First, reset and base capture progress. Now, since you're always going to do damage, even if it's just a couple of points of damage with a high explosive shell, say you only had a 75mm gun and you're shooting at a heavy inside the cap circle, you'll always do some damage, and so you'll always be able to reset base capture progress. See ya, wouldn't want to be ya, M44. Secondly, immobilizing enemy vehicles. High explosive shells are going to have a higher chance of damaging external modules, so tracks. It's going to make it easier to immobilize a tank if you're firing high explosive. The third purpose of this change, however, is the one that I have a little bit of a problem with. Finishing off enemies who are on low health. Now that may at first sound like a good idea. Oh, hang on, he's been spotted. Who is it? Oh, it's the Type 64. No, Fat Joe, what are you doing? Don't aim. Oh, have you learned nothing from your experience in the KV2, Fat Joe? Aiming is for capitalists and losers. You're in the KV2. You just point the gun in the general direction of the target, send a couple of dissidents to the gulag, shut your eyes, pull the trigger and profit. Well, not profit, we are communists after all. Let me rephrase that. You point your gun in the general direction of the target. Ouch, that hurt. Sacrifice a couple of dissidents to the gulag, shut your eyes, pull the trigger, and the workers seize the means of production. But yes, finishing off opponents who are low on health. This is where I have some serious issues. And I'll explain why in a moment. Let's just see what the Hellcat's up to. This is actually very good to see. The team are obviously all equipped with a premium teamwork consumable. They're talking to each other, they're working together. Artillery's pre-aimed at that corner. The Hellcat's going to take a look to see what he can find. Although it is a Dicker Max, a hidden tank destroyer. It's quite brave of the Hellcat because the chances are he's only going to find the Dicker Max when it shoots at him. Let's see. Come on. Oh no, it looks like they have surprised each other, but the Dicker Max gets the first shot off. The Hellcat returns fire. Come on, Fat Joe. Artillery took a shot, missed. Fat Joe secures the kill and saves the Hellcat from further damage. Or he would have if the enemy team were not also communicating. Because Fat Joe's stuck here. He thinks the Type 64 is still up ahead waiting for him. The Type 64 is not. He went down there to help the Dicker Max. And he's got the Hellcat. And that, well, once again, it's even Stevens, 13 kills per team. The Type 64 is low on health. He's taken a couple of hits, but the advantage is definitely with the enemy team here. Because while the KV2 is great in many ways, well, at least for now, one thing that it is not is a scout. Its camo rating is terrible, and its view range is also terrible. So all the Type 64 has to do, and it's not going to be hard, is just spot him and let his artillery do all the work. Oh, there's the artillery. Yeah, that's more like it. You see, he didn't bother aiming. Well done, Fat Joe. We're all so very proud of you. Of course, he's still in trouble because he's never going to see the Type 64 before the Type 64 sees him, so the fact that he still has artillery to back him up isn't really going to be, well, terribly useful. The Type 64 is still entirely capable of winning this, just using its superior view range and camo factor. So, while Fat Joe is thinking about the best way to handle this, spoiler alert, he's going to head down towards the cap. Let me finally explain why I think it's a terrible idea that high explosive is always going to do some damage, allowing you to more easily finish off opponents on low health. So I want you to visualize this. Put yourself in the position of, oh, I don't know, let's say you're in an IS-3 and you're on very low health, you only have a couple of hundred health remaining. Maybe you're even the last tank left alive in your team, and you're being shot at by, let's say, a pair of Furies, a couple of tier 6 mediums with 76mm guns. Now, under the current system, if those two Furies are any good, what they could do is one of them just sits in cover and keeps you spotted, while the other one aims at your weak spots. It's not going to hit your weak spots every time, but if the Fury players know what they're doing, if they're decent players, they can outplay you, even though you're in a technically better tank, by simply working together and utilising their knowledge of your tank's weaknesses. And under those circumstances, you absolutely should lose, because you're getting outplayed. But what if you are the better player? What if you are hiding your weak spots from the two Furies? What if you're constantly keeping the tank moving in order to make it more difficult for them to hit the weak spots that you can't cover up? You're baiting the Furies into taking bigger and bigger risks in order to actually get some damage caused on you, in which case they're more likely to make a mistake that you can take advantage of and kill them. In that situation, you absolutely deserve to win because you're outplaying them. But with these proposed changes to high explosive shells, skill's got nothing to do with it. Knowledge of tank weak spots has nothing to do with it. You don't need to know where to fire at an IS-3, you just need to press the 3 key to load the high explosive, and it doesn't matter how good the IS-3 player is or how bad you are, you're going to win. And right now it looks as if that Type 64 is probably going to win because, you know, all credit to him, he is outplaying not just Fat Joe, but also Fat Joe's only surviving teammate. It's now a one-on-one. The scores are once again even Stevens. And you shouldn't mind losing if you've been outplayed, because that's the only acceptable circumstances for losing, because the enemy team, or the enemy player in this case, was just better than you. There's no shame in losing to somebody who's better than you. Fat Joe is in one hell of a tricky situation here, because there's just no way he's going to be allowed to cap. I mean, he's making the most of it. He is playing well here. He's got the KV2 in the low ground at the southern end of the cap circle, so only really the top of the turret should be sticking out, and he is in cover behind those bushes. Oh, and he has been spotted, and there's the Type 64. Well, that's kind of surprising. I wouldn't have expected the Type 64 to allow himself to get spotted, but he just has to hit and reset once, and, well, the KV2's armour isn't that great. Fat Joe's going to have to... Oh, okay, he bounced a shot. Oh, Fat Joe. Fat Joe, you're aiming again, aren't you? Fat Joe, we've talked about this. But if the Type 64 is going to do anything, he's going to have to do it soon. There's only a couple of seconds left until Fat Joe wins by capping. And... oh, there's the reset. Now Fat Joe must kill the Type 64 in order to win. There's no longer enough time for him to cap. And it was at this point that Fat Joe knew he'd fucked up, because now the Type 64 has a full 20 seconds to have his wicked way with Fat Joe before Fat Joe can reload that gun. Except, you know, sometimes it doesn't really come down to whoever's the better player. Sometimes it just comes down to whoever fucks up the least. And that was Fat Joe. What the hell was the Type 64 playing at? 20 seconds. You're in a Type 64, the KV2 just fired and missed. Was there any particular reason you decided to just sit there and wait for him to reload? And continue to try to snipe him? I don't understand. Well, I do understand. Turns out that the player that made the least mistakes won. And it wasn't the Type 64. Anyway, let me know what you think about these proposed high explosive changes down in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed today's battle, because that's it for today. Well done, Fat Joe. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.